Okay, people pouring in, but I'll still start because last time we ran over slightly and some people had to leave. So welcome to today. As advertised, we're recording this session for the website so that people who couldn't attend can make it. So if you don't want to appear, you can turn your camera off. I certainly would like, once we start, if you could turn off your microphones. So that we don't get any talking across everybody. We do take questions. If you can put them in the chat, if we can pick them up during the day, we will. And if we can't, we'll add them to a growing list of questions and answers that are going up on the website. So the questions from round one are up on the website. I won't say we won't add more to it because we might. And then today's questions we'll add on to the end of that and extend the full set of questions from the 2 kickoff meetings in there, but already some quite good questions have been asked. Dr. Mullen has had to give his apologies, so I will attempt to do justice to his part of the presentation. If you would like to see the man himself, you can look at the recording of the first kickoff meeting, where he gave a very nice stakeholders view of geothermal, which I think people found very interesting. So we're still pouring in, but I think we will get on with it. Mary, are you happy if I hand over to you?
Yes, if you just go to the next slide, please. Great. Thank you, Clive, and thanks everyone for attending today. This is the second one of this same event, so essentially a rerun, and we're just talking about decarbonisation of heat in the NHS Estates. We've got a number of partners here today who are supporting this work. This includes the British Geological Survey, who will be giving a presentation on geothermal energy, as well as Cadent, who's going to be talking to us about hydrogen. But this work is looks beyond those 2 technologies alone. As part of the whole program, we're looking at district energy as well, and there will be opportunities at later events, which would run across our HIM as well, and some other workshops to look specifically at some of this energy, some of these opportunities. You get an introduction today to the mapping that's been done of sites and the opportunities for low carbon heat for you, especially geographically as well, what this looks like as well. Next slide. Great, if you just click through, thank you. So that the NHS has a net zero target of 2040 and an 80% reduction by 2032 is no longer news. And since we set that target, we have developed a strategic action plan for estates on how to meet these targets. And this is the estate's net zero carbon delivery plan, which I'm hoping most of you on this call would have some knowledge of. And this document details how estates and facilities should lead the way on net zero, what needs to be done by when, who needs to take this action, and just all the reporting and accountabilities associated with that as well. Beyond that, we've also focused on what we consider to be the pillars of estates decarbonisation, which includes reduction of our energy demand, as well as preparing for low carbon heating, most of which we know that electrification will play a role in supporting that. And by so doing, thinking about that increased electricity demand and the need for improving our resilience through both on-site and off-site generation, and definitely what role our supply chain will play in this as well. So this is just an all-encompassing view, and some aspects of this are more developed than others. However, we're continuing activities to ensure that there is progress against all the actions and identify what levers we need to support the delivery of the plan and the aforementioned pillars of decarbonisation. And one of those activities is what we're doing today, which is really focusing on the decarbonisation of our heat. Next slide, please. Great. So this is a cut of data from Eric. And as you can see, heating is the biggest source of NHS building carbon emissions. And we need to understand how we transition away from this to meet our decarbonisation goals. And there are many reasons why it's hard to decarbonise heat. The main ones being the size of the challenge and as well as the associated cost involved from moving from, the traditional heating systems to things that are, newer technologies and potentially more costly, as well as the energy efficiency of existing stocks, especially where we've had to heat and treat buildings. So these are some of the main challenges. And to address this, as stated in the Estates delivery plan, there is a requirement for heat decarbonisation plans. And this is an importance as whilst technology is important, but it's not enough. The heat decarbonisation plans plays a key role in both helping to identify both the strategic long and short-term plans, as well as the capital planning for heat decarbonisation, as well as those set of activities that we need really. Next slide, it's really just focusing on heat decarbonisation plans. For those of you that have heard me speak before will know how much I've kind of banged on about this. But the first graphic you can see there is from Salix. And this is really all the benefits that Salix highlighted as part of their low carbon skills fund as well. But beyond this, we see heat decarbonisation plans playing a role in supporting local and national planning. And we intend to see the NHS developing these plans, not just to highlight that stage approach at the trust level, but also to support the national strategic planning for heat decarbonisation as well. An example of how this would continue to develop is the work that Greater Manchester has done. And what they've done is to develop a local air energy master plan for each of their districts. And by so doing, this has helped them address issues affecting their local energy market, both across the supply chain and allowing organizations to share or avoid or reduce grid costs, which we all know. For those of you that have done, for instance, PSDS projects, we know how much of a cost that can be. So they will, these plans will play a role nationally as well in influencing funding instruments as part of the heat and building strategy as well. And in the NHS, we continue to see it, as I mentioned, playing a key role in understanding progress towards delivery of our net zero target, where strong advocacy and support is required, and where and how delivery vehicles can be supported. And I think lastly, what they will do is play that key role to signal technology development and market innovation, some of which we're beginning to see, for instance, with the development of the high temperature heat pumps technology themselves as well. I'll be closing with the next slide, if you don't mind going to that, and just click through it, please. Great. So this is a graphic from the heat and building strategy that I mentioned earlier, which was published in 2021. It sets out the vision for what a net zero building for the future looks like. And this view mirrors the first slide where I introduced what we consider to be the pillars of estates decarbonisation. Clearly what it does is recognizes low carbon heat as a key component of that net zero building of the future, and highlights the key technologies that will play a role, some of which we will discuss today. And we know that some of those technologies, e.g. heat pumps and heat networks, already play a role today. And we already know which type of buildings this technology are most likely to be effective in. However, over the next few years, a diverse mix of technologies will support the existing ones and play a key role. So those are what we'll be introducing today. So I'm hoping that by the end of this webinar and workshop series, including the AHIM events, which we'll talk about later, the Trust have a greater understanding of their own decarbonisation technologies and their program for your sites as well. And that's my time. Thanks, Vanessa. And I'll hand over to the next speaker. Great. Stephen, over to you.
Hi everyone, my name is Stephen Lowndes, and I have a technical lead with the CEF. What I'm going to talk about to you now is a map. And you might say, well, why do you want to talk about a map? Well, as we shall see, access to a number of these decarbonisation options are to a greater or lesser degree going to be dependent on where you're located in the country. So it's important to explore the options available, and so as a starting point, mapping out the top 200 or so of the highest energy using hospital sites. And by that we mean sites with heat demands in excess of around 10 megawatt hours. If we do that, it starts to build up a picture of what sites are most likely to have the ability to consider in opportunities like geothermal heat or access to the initial hydrogen rollout and district energy schemes improvements. So as we're going to see, it's not all lost for those sites that appear on the face of it to be out of reach of some of these primary energy source locations. Can you go to the next slide, please, Clive? So is doing nothing an option? Well, clearly not. Most of us are aware of the NHS targeting to achieve the net zero 2040 targets. That's nearly a 50% reduction in emissions based on the 2020 baseline by 2032, and that's point A on the graph above, and a 73% reduction in the carbon plus footprint by 2038, and that's point B. And I think we all realise this is a huge challenge, both from a practical and a financial perspective. But this graph is showing the impact of doing nothing and hoping that the grid electricity decarbonisation will get us there on its own. Based on recent electricity decarbonisation trajectories, the best we might see emissions drop by around about 17% if we do nothing at all. But a major part of the problem, as we've been seeing, has been mentioned by Mary, is really the need to decarbonise heat. So you go to the next slide, please. So we know we've got to do something about heat, as grid electricity decarbonisation is largely out of our hands. So our map looks at the potential access to each of the top 209 sites has to some of these key decarbonisation options. So the map on the left here is showing the key hydrogen hub locations, of which Cadent will discuss in more detail later in this presentation. You can see hospital clusters around the respective hydrogen hubs, and the ability to connect will depend upon the initial rollout routes and the first phases of the hydrogen mains. Go to the next one. So the map on the left is showing the sites sitting near geothermal heat zones, and we're going to hear shortly more about what this opportunity might mean for sites located in these sorts of regions. While some sites, particularly those in the northwest, are lucky enough to be sitting in hydrogen hub regions and geothermal zones, the map on the right-hand side shows there's a large contingent which may have less of near-term access to hydrogen and don't sit on any significant geothermal resource. Should we go to the next one? So the map again, this time on the left-hand side, is showing the intensity of district heat schemes which are being developed or planned to be developed in the different regions of England. The dark red zone corresponds to the highest density of schemes. And this...
We've lost you, Stephen. You've muted.
Sorry about that. What you can see with the left-hand side map is the areas which have the highest density for district heat schemes, and that coincides with the previous slide that was outside of the most likely initial hydrogen hub development and access to geothermal heat. So it's also showing the key pilot cities that have been targeted to develop major district heat schemes to which hospitals are seen as significant heat anchors. And the map on the right shows the significant underdeveloped or vacant land greater than a hectare in area. So these sorts of sites might be significant when you're considering major solar PV space or other renewables that could either serve the site itself or have power sleeved to the grid for NHS sites elsewhere. So you've got to remember, for many, electric heat pumps may be the only viable heat decarbonisation option. So the ability for the NHS to develop an on-site generation at scale, where practical, reduces the operational cost risk for electric heating into the future. Okay, so if you go to the next slide, here we are. So this is my last slide, and it's showing the results of a model that has strategically applied different heat decarbonisation opportunities to each of these 209 sites, depending on their proximity to either geothermal or hydrogen, or their ability to use district heat or indeed electric heat pumps. I must stress that this model is highly speculative, and the different technology spread choices would, you know, if you chose something different for any of these sites, it would probably show different or varying changes to the emissions reduction. But at a very high level, it's possible to see that if a concerted push to move towards these various options was made between now and 2038, we've got the potential to move towards those decarbonisation targets that we saw earlier on. So that's it really for me. So I'm going to hand over to the next person.
Hello, yeah, that's me. I'm Corinna Abesser. I'm the policy director at the British Geological Survey, and we've been looking at the opportunities for geothermal for the NHS, and I'll give you a brief overview of what I'm going to be talking about. Next slide, please. So geothermal energy we define as the energy stored in the form of heat beneath the surface of the Earth. It comes from different sources, mainly from the radioactive decay of some elements that are stored in the crust. And as such, the resource is sort of renewing itself all the time, and cannot run out per se. Next slide, please. The energy can be the energy is stored sort of at different depths, and so there's different systems you can use to get it out, sort of exploit it. And the graph on the right just shows you from the left to right sort of systems that extract geothermal energy from different depths. So on the left is sort of technologies that use ground source heat pumps, sort of for individual houses or small demand settlement. And then on the right hand side, the three points on the right are sort of what we consider deep geothermal energy, and that's what we've been looking at in this study. Where is there potential for the NHS to use deeper sources? Because the deeper you go, the higher the heat density, and so you can get more heat out of those deeper wells. On the left-hand side, you can see what sort of geothermal energy is being used for, and heating, district heating specifically, is one of the largest users for the temperatures that we'll find in the UK. I've marked here the two geothermal settings that we see feasible for deep geothermal energy. The one are the hot sedimentary basins or hot sedimentary aquifers, which deliver heat at about sort of 60 to 80 degrees. And then we also have radiothermal granites in the UK. They can deliver much higher heat, but they also deliver, they require deeper drilling. But if you drill deeper, you can get temperatures hot enough for power generation. It's worth saying that that's not, you know, there's only very few settings in the UK where that might be possible. So really the target is heat for geothermal heat to support heating of hospitals or sort of district heating networks. Next. So we've been looking, and apologies, there's a mistake in here. We've been looking at the 209 NHS hospitals that Stephen just been talking about. And we found that plotting them on our map of the different geothermal targets, we find that 109 sites overlie a sedimentary basin. And on my plot, these are the green colors, blue and yellow. They are different sort of age geological basins where deep geothermal aquifers exist. There's also 3 sites on radiogenic granites. So the opportunity is great for the NHS to use geothermal as a potential decarbonisation source, but it's worth saying that there is variations within these basins that need to be explored. So it's, this is a national scale assessment. So for further details, we can provide some different plots at one of the next meetings where geothermal will be discussed specifically, but also as part of a feasibility study where we really look at the site that of interest. Next. So within this study, we've just been looking at, how much savings, what the heat demands are, how much CO2 savings compared to gas could be achieved, and what the estimated depth is that one would have to drill to reach 50 degrees. Next. And it's just going to go into the CO2 carbon emission savings. We found that for the hospitals we looked at, where they overlie geothermal prospect, hospitals could save 1.3 to 22.7 kilotons of carbon dioxide equivalent per year. And if you install geothermal or if you kind of install geothermal heating for the 30 top ranking hospital sites in terms of heat demand, you could save 12% of the published emissions from the NHS England's hospital estate. Next. In order to get a geothermal project off the ground, there is a number of steps to follow, and we have just published these kind of roadmap, if you want to call it that. So there's the stages are listed here and described in the graph, and I appreciate you won't be able to read this, but we have published a paper on looking at geothermal and what including the steps to take to develop a project. And there is a link on the next slide, please. So this paper is available sort of from the Northeast Local Enterprise Partnership website, as well as from our website at the British Geological Survey. It looks at the opportunities for geothermal, but also talks you through the individual steps that one has to take to develop a project. And that's me done. I think one more slide. No. Thank you.
Over to you, Sally. Are you muted?
I'm here. Hi, everyone. I'm Sally from Cadent. I'm Head of Regional Development for our Eastern region and North London. And I'm going to talk to you about Cadence programs for hydrogen. So next slide, please. So Cadent supplies 50% of gas users, distribution gas users across the UK. So that's 12 million supply points. And you can see in the orange where we cover. And it's about 132,000 kilometres of pipeline supplying natural gas to our customers, businesses and residential homes. But of course, we can't continue to burn unabated natural gas. And Cadent has an ambition to transition all of our networks across to low carbon hydrogen. The low carbon hydrogen will be produced initially in and around the northwest, the Humber region, Teesside, and then Baxton and East Anglia. And there are also production hotspots throughout the country. So I'm going to take you through some of our regional programs for hydrogen now. Next slide, please. Before I do that, I want to just share really that government is supportive of this growing hydrogen economy that we can see. They see particularly the criticality of low carbon hydrogen for decarbonising industry and commercial and transport operations. And they've put in place, or they are putting in place, a production business model for hydrogen and a hydrogen transportation and storage business model to move the hydrogen around the country. And this has been all building up over the past few years with the publishing of their hydrogen strategy in August 2021. The most important thing I want you to take away from this slide, apart from that government supports hydrogen, is that the hydrogen production business model will subsidise the cost of hydrogen, low carbon hydrogen, and bring prices in line with natural gas. Obviously, cost is a very important consideration for trusts. Next slide, please. So this is a view on our 5 main regional hydrogen programmes. So we have HyNet up in the northwest, and then for the east, the northeast, and the East Midlands, we have a collaboration with Northern Gas Networks called East Coast Hydrogen, and that also is a collaboration with National Gas, which provides the transmission, the spine of hydrogen infrastructure across that region. And East Coast Hydrogen is something that we'll focus in a little bit more on in a second. Hydrogen Valley covers the West Midlands and the corridor across to Bagdon, which will be a major hydrogen production centre alongside Humber and the HyNet region. And then Capital Hydrogen covers London and part of the east of England. Also, again, effectively, the programme is seeking to, all of these programmes are seeking to establish a programme of projects that will ultimately see gas networks repurposed to hydrogen in these regions. Next slide, please. So our two main programmes, or our two most far advanced programmes, are HyNet Northwest and then East Coast Hydrogen on the east. So HyNet, just the first phase, is 125 kilometres of brand new 100% hydrogen pipeline. Will connect low carbon hydrogen produced in around Ellesmere Port with power generators and industry and commercial sites across the northwest region. There are multiple phases for HyNet, and we're just reaching the first stage of effectively doubling down on our detailed design for the pipeline for phase 1, and we're looking to start move into what's called a DCO phase, effectively, where we consult on the pipeline. On the East Coast Hydrogen region, we have a pipeline plan to move low carbon hydrogen out of the Humber region into the immediate area of the South Humber, but also out to South Yorkshire and south from there to Nottingham, Derby, and on to Northamptonshire. There is also low carbon hydrogen production planned, not just in the Humber, but also in the East Midlands itself, so in the Nottingham area, which could hopefully bring forward parts of this pipeline in the south of East Coast Hydrogen before connection to the Humber. So we're hoping to grow from multiple hotspots, grow that pipeline network out. Next slide, please. So this is a snapshot of the organisations that are supportive of our programmes. I've got the East Coast Hydrogen supporters and also the Capital Hydrogen supporters. We'll talk about that in a second. Industry needs hydrogen. We've so far received forecasts in the whole East Coast hydrogen region to the tune of 56 terawatt hours of hydrogen per year. And so just to put it in context, the entirety of power generation and industrial in the northeast and the East Midlands comes to around 136 terawatt hours. And we've already received forecasts to the tune of 56 terawatt hours of hydrogen requirements. So industry and also commercial organisations are really getting on board with our programmes and are supporting it. And this is really important because government, we need to be showing government that this infrastructure is required so that we can move to the next design stage. So East Coast Hydrogen in the east is at pre-feed stage. So we're doing our early routing of the pipeline, and we by the end of the pre-feed, which will be the end of October, we'll have a good idea of what the phases are, and how we think that we should sequence them. So capital hydrogen supporters are at the bottom. I'll flick on one more slide and talk about one of the particular hotspots we're focusing on. So just to help orientate yourselves, this proposed East London hydrogen pipeline is located in Thurrock and into East London. And that's because we're aware of around 8 different organisations that either want to import or produce hydrogen in the Thurrock region. And there's multiple heavy gas users that want to switch to hydrogen along the north bank of the Thames. So you can see that if we create this pipeline route, which may be partly through repurposed pipeline, which will speed things up, we're effectively anchoring hydrogen production and end use in East London from where we can grow out more further. The thing that I should also mention as part of my presentation is that I've shown you in detail East Coast hydrogen and one particular hotspot for capital hydrogen. My colleague Martin will be presenting on HyNet at a different session. But I also wanted to share that really wherever there is hydrogen production, there is the potential for the development of hydrogen pipelines in order to connect supply and demand. So just thinking about regions such as East Anglia, you've got the Bacton hydrogen production centre, which will be operational by 2030. Norwich is close by to that, so if there's an interest in hydrogen demand at hospitals around there, please do reach out. And then there's other hydrogen production hotspots such as in Felixstowe and Harwich, and I've already mentioned the East Midlands region, so the Nottingham Derby area. So I think I just might have one more slide. Yes, thank you. So we would welcome direct dialogue with you. Please do reach out. My contact details are at the end of the slide deck. We'd love to talk to you about whether you think hydrogen could feature in your trust decarbonisation plan. And we can discuss your requirements in the context of our existing programmes, but also as our newer programmes develop, we'll have much more coming in that space. So we'd be delighted if you got in touch. That's me, Clive.
Okay, Dirk, thank you very much. Dr. Mullen is an MP and a doctor from Crewe. Was present the next part. He can't make it today. He's tied up. So I'll talk to his slides as best I can. So that's a picture of Dr. Mullen standing at the wellhead of a site. I think it's in Germany. And that's a picture that appears on a report that he did for the Prime Minister as he's leading the exercise of trying to promote geothermal energy as a way forward across the country. Dr. Mullen gave a very good talk about stakeholder management, about how while we're drilling holes, a great big rig might come for a while, but then it goes away, and that it's possible to drill without disturbing the local population. And he quoted several examples that he'd been to see of that actually happening in different parts of Europe to see how it worked. So if you'd like to see his presentation, it is on the NH Power website, where we're putting all documentation relating to these talks. But I thought I'd take the opportunity, seeing Dr. Mullen isn't here, just to share his paper on the subject, which you might find useful for people who want some paperwork. So his paperwork is called the Deep Dig. He issued it in June this year. This is about page 3 or page 4, showing some sites that he went to visit where produced geothermal energy. There's quite a nice description of what it is and the like. It's got a nice green colored cover on it, just in case you don't get the point, and goes into it. And his particular concern is marshalling the resources to get this to actually happen. So he's got a little version of a map that you've now seen more detail from British Geological Survey. You got Durham University to help, and there's some indications of some of the areas that were helpful to there. And he talks a little bit about well development on the right hand page here. A bit about costs and barriers, because he's taking a governmental look to how we do this thing, and he looked at how different countries have tried to support this kind of development, because it's very common on the continent, the European continent. So you might want to have a look at his report there. There he is looking into mechanisms that that he consulted on. How could we make this work better? Could they provide feed-in tariffs, contracts for difference, which is the mechanism they'll use to drive the price of hydrogen down to the same as gas? Could they supply capital funding? I know that's something that several of you have asked questions about. Could he provide contract for differences in the case of electricity? And then there's insurance for exploration phase, because the one thing that might not be apparent to you is that you don't know whether there's heat down there unless you go down there and have a look. And that's quite pricey. So the steps that Corinna showed you of working out and drilling a well involves quite a lengthy desktop exercise and series of permits and all the rest of it, but aren't too expensive, but take a while. And then we all make a decision whether we're going to drill or not. And at that point, somebody's going to be carrying a lot of risk. And one of the ways of carrying risk is through insurance. So this document might be useful to you to have a look at and to help you with people that you want to get thinking about this kind of thing. And then he goes in lastly to mine water heat, which might be interesting. I know that some of the hospitals have been approached by the coal board and the like about using mine water. It tends to be cooler, but it does have some advantages, and it does appear in the mining areas. And you can see he's done a little map and a little explanation of that there. What he's particularly strong on is dealing with stakeholders, people who live in the area, people who may have heard about fracking and may be concerned that somehow this is similar to fracking, while it bears very little in common with fracking and the like, and trying to help people come to terms with this and engaging early. And he did offer to try and support that insofar as he could. So I'd encourage you to look at it. The link to his thing, you can either search for it or you can look at the link on the invite, because it did include the link on the invitation you've got. I gave him these couple of slides to talk to, but he isn't here, so he hasn't done that. So if you don't mind, I will push on times gathering into collaboration, which is what we're all doing now. This exercise is not being led by NHS England. Well, it is as a leadership exercise, but it's not some hidden grant strategy or master plan or anything else to force people anywhere. You're all doing your own net zero plans, and you'll do them in any way that you think is appropriate. But if we do collaborate, we have the chance to share information. We can use our power together, and there are all kinds of things where we will need help. Some of the technology needs sites to have a trial on. We may or certainly need to get finance. That's if it's not a grant, which are hard enough to get, but other forms of finance. And best use of resources. There are only so many people who are expert on geothermal or some of these other technologies, and we want to make best use of it. Sally just offered for you to email her. Well, I don't imagine she'll be over chuffed if she gets 500 emails, but if she gets a few targeted emails where we've all got our thinking caps together, then she can probably do quite a lot with that. And together we could do a lot more than trusts could do alone. And it might seem a funny thing to say, but it is particularly true. And the main thing is that everybody on this call is busy. They have a day job. Net zero is obviously important, but we've somehow got to find a way to slip it in on top of everything else. And unfortunately, it gets delegated well down the organization in most cases. Even though there is a board member responsible for sustainability, it generally ends up in the States or the Energy Office to lead this on a day-to-day basis. And this committee, this collaboration can bring together support for people who are struggling to explain it to their board and answer questions about finance or legal consequences or risks and all the rest of it. So the idea is we've got people together voluntarily to collaborate to try and help you to the extent that you want to be helped. So it's in your hands. But the most likely thing is that if you're lucky enough to have geothermal or have a suitable DE scheme or have hydrogen knocking on your door, is you're going to be faced at some point with two projects on your hands. And one you can consider inside the fence or inside the flange is the way we tend to think about it. And that will be getting your site ready. Your site might be old, it might be worn out, it might be steam. Now, there's nothing particularly wrong with steam if you got hydrogen knocking on your door. except I'm not aware of any hydrogen-ready steam boilers, but they must be coming. But all the other technologies generally require change to low temperature hot water. So there's likely to be a project inside your grounds that needs to take part, and that's subject to procurement and governance and business cases and all the normal stuff. And then there's likely to be a second project, which we consider outside the flange or outside the site, as just a simple way of thinking about that. And that could be a geothermal installation. It might be on your land, but the idea would be heat would come out of a pipe, go around, heat up a plate heat exchanger, so you could use the heat and then dive back into the ground again. So the second project might be a geothermal well, or it might be your part of a district heating scheme, or it might be your preparations you make to take hydrogen on board to your site, because hydrogen comes at high pressure. You know, we're talking 35 kilo bar, 35 bar or beyond, sometimes 70 bar. We're talking about a very different thing to gas. And there are going to be two projects that need to be done, and they need to come together at the same point in time. And between now and 2032, if we're going to try and hit the first target. So that's kind of where we're at. And the collaboration could help those. We can help you with your net zero plans, and the idea is that IHEM will take you a step further if you want to be there, and we're now considering road shows where we can take you a step further beyond that. We can share resources for governance and business cases. We can share procurements. Already we have 5 geothermal projects in procurement at the moment, and there's no reason why we couldn't do another one, a shared one between, say, the first wave of trusts who wanted to work together for this. Finance and funding and green network applications and PSDS applications, and approaching UK Investment Bank, which is now a requirement under the SALIX rules. These are things we can all help with. Managing resources, contractors, you're going to have to do this work, and suppliers and all the rest of it need to be managed, because we're talking of a lot more projects than have typically gone on in the past. And then the committee itself wields considerable influence, which it has the opportunity to influence SALIX Bays, who funded some of this, some of the pilot work, the involvement at government level from Dr. Mullen and others. And we can help manage risk and try and help manage the message to trust boards. So the idea of collaboration is we're here to help you, but we're not some nebulous organization that's got some master plan. Where people are collaborating together and hoping you want to do the same. And if you do want to, you can be in, and if you don't want to, well, you're welcome to carry on the way you are now. Any problems? To remind you back to Mary's slide, we're trying to deal with gas by either bringing electricity into the gas area, by reducing consumption and the efficiency of your plant, so we would use less gas, and by introducing carbon-free energy into supplementing and taking out the gas if we can. And this exercise at the moment is looking particularly at the bottom right, the geothermal, hydrogen, clean DE networks, use of excess land where you've got it. And then there's the potential for a managed service, because in the future, your site may have heat pumps that use electricity. It may have hydrogen for some or all of its plant. It may have, if you've got hydrogen, you might have a CHP unit. We might have geothermal energy, and that is not sized for peak, it's sized for average load. So you still got to deal with the peaks. So there is quite a chance that there may be a need for a managed service whereby somebody or through collaboration helps you manage those different things together. If we're shunting in electricity from some kind of shared generation facility off-site, that all goes into there. And there is a nice, at the moment, managed services also avoid VAT. So there may be some benefits that just drop out of managing the future, because the future is not going to be like the past where gas just flowed, you just use as much as you like and got on with your lives. It's not going to be that simple. For implementing each process, I don't plan to work through this, but this is the plan that the pilot geothermal procurements are following. And it's a 4-year program, and then it goes into an operational phase. And there's significant capital cost associated with the geothermal, but it is possible to recover those, because remember, once you've got geothermal, then the energy coming out the ground is largely free. You've got to pay an O&M and life cycle cost and a bit of profit to the company doing that. And you have to pay for the electric pump that's going to pump the water around. But the actual basic energy is free, and that could pay back a good chunk of the investment. I won't plan to go through this, but it's important to understand these all take various processes, and this is where we are prepared to help you with that. The other thing is we've just got to accept that this is going to work in waves. So Geothermal Project, ignoring the condition of your own site, whether you have steam, what condition your boilers are and the rest of it, just a geothermal scheme itself takes about 4 years. First 2 years of feasibility and permits and possibly ultrasonic tests of the ground, seismic tests, before you drill and create wells and then pipe up. So it takes 4 years. You heard from Corinna, there are about 112 potential sites for the NHS. Remember, each site that we've invited to here is surrounded by its own ecosystem of mental health, community trusts, clinics, and all the rest of it. And if you get a geothermal system for your site, you're probably going to want to include some of those and other local users in your system as well. And there's no way that we could do 120 of these and kick them all off next year. We're going to have to do them in the order depending upon how much pre-work you need to do on site and the rest on your site. And even if you look at hydrogen, which is potentially much simpler because ignoring all the reduction in energy usage on site and all the good stuff that you're busy with anyway, there's a procurement involved in that, there's design involved in that. You've got to then get the hydrogen onto the site, and your site needs to be ready to handle the hydrogen. So have appropriate boilers in place. And of course, if you've got hydrogen, there's no reason why our good old friend CHP can't come back into the equation, because combined heat and power has become a carbon generator, so they're out of favor. But if you've got hydrogen to begin with, and that hydrogen is clean enough, then CHP starts to give you a funding route to paying for some of this stuff. Okay, as regards to the collaboration, the support depends on you. You know, we're prepared to get together and support this thing as best we can. So we've got the kickoff in July. This is the second one. In August and September, we've got technology meetings. So it starts with the HyNet hydrogen. So I've issued invites to the trusts that are most likely to get connected to HyNet. And then I've issued an invitation to all the rest of you saying you might want to listen in. Then following that, we have the geothermal presentations. And again, we've issued an invite to all of you, all of those who appeared on the British Geological Survey map. You've got a specific invite, and then we've invited everybody else who wants to attend, because that map is a first shy at the thing. It's not the whole story. And then we've got the district heating scheme. We're still working on that. The Energy Act is not yet approved by Parliament. The 26 pilot zones are coming together. We're busy going through the hospital map and putting those on. So you'll shortly issue invites to all of those that are on the scheme. I see I've got to hurry up, and that'll come shortly. And so we work through the technology in August and September. Workshops at IEM face-to-face. You'll get a chance to meet the people you've heard speak today and many others at IHEM, where we'll break you into teams and you can ask questions and speak to people face to face. And then in the Energy Theatre, they will be giving talks open to the whole floor. And then November, we're looking at road shows, if you're interested, where we come locally to several local areas in the NHS and try and help you locally. So that's that part. Now, last few slides to wrap up the IHEM slides. IHEM are a sponsor of this, as they are throughout, and they've agreed to host the local, or help host the local road shows. But we have the workshops, we have the initial technology talks, HyNet, geothermal, district heating, East Coast hydrogen, decarbonisation of gas and other on-site options for those of you who haven't got alternatives, stretching 3rd of August to 31st of August. And then we repeat them in September, ending early October in case you missed them. They'll all go re-recorded or be put up on the website, NH Power. And then the IHEM workshops, we got 2 days at IHEM. Day 1 is everything except hydrogen, and day 2 is hydrogen. So the 11th is hydrogen day, and the 10th is geothermal, district heating, and the various decarbonisation technologies that you'll see in the technology sessions. By the end of IHEM, we really hope to help you with your plans so that you have not only an idea about which technologies you should be looking at for your plan, but an idea of how long they would take to do and what you need to do beforehand. But what you won't perhaps know is what they might cost and what the sort of savings commercial balance might be. And that's the plan for the roadshow, is to give you, at the roadshow, provide you give us some certain information to give you an idea about what those numbers would be, so that your plan that you're writing is informed as we can help it be. Okay, that concludes the slide deck. We finished fractionally late. Apologies for that. Has anybody been watching the flow of questions? Do we want to try and pick up any of those, or are we going to add them to the list? I assume that they've been coming through on the chat.
I have tried to answer a few of them. I think we could pick up one and then we'll close, and we'll pick up the rest in the FAQs. Stephen, this one's for you about the 47% and 73% that you mentioned in your slide. Is Stephen still here?
Yeah, Stephen is still here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I assume people are sort of trying to replicate those against the headline figures that are in the NHS paper, which I think is like an 80% carbon reduction. What you've got to remember is the carbon reductions all relate to baseline. So depending on when you take the baseline, so the headline for the NHS is the 80% carbon reduction, and that relates to a 1990 baseline, but most trusts haven't really got a clue what they were consuming or using in 1990. So I think in recent months, Greener NHS have sort of articulated a slightly more precise position that's based on a 2020 baseline. So that's what those two figures relate to. It sits on that same trajectory line that starts in 1990 and goes all the way to 2040. It's just further down that line, rather than having to save 80%, you're having to save 47%, because actually you've already saved some through the benefit of the greening of the electricity grid, etc.
Okay,
that's very useful. Thank you.
Okay, I see something about mine water. I mean, that's a source of low temperature heat. You'd have to normally put it through a heat pump of one sort or another to get it up to higher temperature. I do hope you're encouraging people who are developing your site to design all new buildings to 40-degree heating, if you wouldn't mind, because that's the only way you're going to be able to really use every drop of heat very efficiently, is you want buildings that run on 40 degrees or thereabouts. And we'll top up for hot water. So mine water then starts to play a very good part in that. Okay, would you like to wrap up, Mary? Yeah, absolutely. There is a few questions which we'll pick up in the FAQs. I'll support this. Alexis, I've seen your comment on hydrogen. We have mapped out those trusts, especially on the East Coast path, and there is a go, no go decision points next year. So some of those trusts are aware, but I will share a bit more information on all of this as well. So if you've got any question even after this, please drop it into the chat and wrap that up together. As Clive mentioned, I think Clive has mentioned the roadshow and the opportunities at IHEM. I think the important takeaway from the two sessions we've had, it's really just this is a case of us coming together to introduce what the art of the possible is, and potentially to highlight to you guys what is available in the regions that you're at. And so that as you develop your heat decarbonisation plans, you understand the breadth of what needs to go into it. And then hopefully in IHEM, you get an opportunity to actually talk to industry as well, depending on what path you choose to take. So I'm hoping that you all engage in this and we get to a position next year where, it's a lot clearer what our heat decarbonisation roadmap looks like for each of the trusts. So thank you all for joining. And I'll see you all again. Take care. Thank you all very much. Neil, did you have a question, or you were probably dropping off? Thank you, everyone. Take care. Okay. Shona, if you're still on, I'll have a go at your question if I can, but otherwise just drop it in the chat.
Shifrab was trying to leave.
Okay, right, okay.
I'm going
Well,
to drop
thank-
off as well. I'll catch for you soon.
Thank you all. I hope this was useful.